I like action RPGs because they are generally safe. It is a solved formula, one that is generally pretty fun. So, when I saw Ariana and the Elder Codex was an action RPG, with a ton of different attacks and a charming world to explore, I was excited. It looked to have a lot of heart, at a time when the industry could use more. Add in a number of stories, a couple worlds to explore, and more, it certainly had potential. However, given real life is never that simple, is this a magical world worth exploring or a frustrating mess?
という存在を知った人類は魔法のペンによりさまざまな魔法書をこの世に生み出した。その中でも三元章の書と呼ばれる3冊の魔法書は4元素の書と並ぶほどの魔力を有する魔法書であった。これら7冊の書は七英傑の書と呼ばれ
Normally, I try to avoid spoilers when talking about the narrative, but in the case of Ariana, it is rather difficult. For this reason, this section will contain some sizable spoilers. If that isn't something you want to hear, feel free to skip ahead. I included the skip time in the description and video. Just know it is very formulaic and predictable. Okay, let's get into it.
事件が勃発する。
The narrative starts by introducing the larger world. Essentially, a demon gave mankind the means to do magic, along with the ability to create more. Over time, the codexes that enabled this became damaged, resulting in a group of librarians restoring the book. Ariana is unique among librarians because she has the ability to enter books directly and heal them. This faster method results in her being tasked with fixing the most important 7 books. Each codex is centered around a story that somewhat embodies the idea of said book. All this starts with the Water Codex, which is a story about selfless sacrifice. It is honestly a touching story, despite it hitting the expected plot beats. The only real criticism I give it is the lack of voice acting. It limits the emotional impact, something that can be fully felt in the ending recap, since that is fully voiced over.
「戦争で全てを失ったと嘆く姉がいた。廃れた心には闇が宿り、闇は空となって姉を無力の牢獄に閉じ込めた。しかし妹の献身により姉の心の闇は光に照らされ、殻は破られようとしていた。だが運命は残酷にも姉の光を奪い去る。毒に侵された妹が命を落としたのだ。光を奪われた姉は神に救いを求める。その祈りは女神に届き、姉は自らの命をもって妹を救う。
Upon exiting the book, we are introduced to 2 overarching narratives. One is the already mentioned task of fixing the books, with the other being Ariana's quest to find her parents. And this is why I say avoiding spoilers is rather difficult. I feel like it goes without saying there is going to be a sinister turn. Not to mention a twist surrounding the missing parents. And the story does just that, but in a way that is rather predictable. Most of this is due to the number of characters. Excluding Ariana, there are only 4 characters that get expanded upon. So, it isn't hard to guess who the parent is and who is secretly evil. Seriously, it is not subtle. I figured out where the story was going almost instantly, and was not wrong. Now, being predictable is not the end of the world. I love the Labyrinth games, and even though I figured out some of the twists, it has so much more beyond them. However, that just isn't the case here. Ariana ultimately wants to tell this story, with the main reveal being the explanation as to why, something that is rather generic. As a result, it is kind of like sitting through a 7-hour-long movie in hopes it gets better, yet it never does. I should note, this is not entirely fair to the story. I actually liked several of the stories she was tasked with fixing. Though, even those stories follow a predictable arc, largely because they feel like they are imparting lessons. It just doesn't make for a compelling experience, forcing gameplay to step up.
危険な状況そのものが異質で、いえ。
At a glance, Ariana has a lot going for it. There is a normal attack, some magical moves, plus staple actions like dodge. Throughout the adventure, she obtains additional powers, expanding her core moveset to like 25 spells. That is a lot of options, with the elemental attacks feeding into an attribute system. There is a lot of depth below the surface, though there is no point in exploring it due to how poorly balanced this game is. Issues start almost immediately. Odds are you will take unavoidable damage or fall down a hole. I say unavoidable because there is a double jump and air dodge that vastly improve your defensive abilities, but before getting those, it is extremely difficult to dodge certain aerial attacks. As for falling, I guess someone thought it would be fun to lose like half your health. I suppose that's better than an instant loss, though it's brutal regardless. Where it really starts to stand out is the lack of invincibility frames. There are certain enemies, such as the first boss, that can attack in multiple directions at once. Based off positioning, it is possible to take like 6 hits in a single mistake and lose, something that is hard to avoid without vastly increasing the fight's duration. While this can feel cheap, because it is, the same applies to enemies. Any attack that can hit in quick succession has a premium to single hit moves. In some cases, it is a question of whether you deal 200 or 1200 damage. There is just no contest. Among these overpowered skills is actually one of the first ones, Shockwave. This move is almost designed to be broken. One upgrade makes it shoot in 2 directions, another increases its range, and it can hit multiple times. I maxed it out early, and the move just obliterates certain bosses. All of this leads to a frankly unusual gameplay loop. Instead of pushing dodging, or just overpowering everything, the tactic is to heal through the pain. This is due to how healing works. Since healing is a spell like any attack, the only cost is waiting for the move to cool down. In addition to being able to endlessly spam it, Ariana heals over time instead of a single burst. As a result, she can effectively tank weaker attacks. I mean, if you can withstand most attacks, there is no point in playing defensively. The best tactic will always be pure offense, with the occasional breaks to reapply healing. For better or worse, the developers realized this issue and corrected it in the worst way possible. You see, early game feels incredibly cheap and unenjoyable. You lack the means to properly defend, enemies have moves that feel unfair, and you are at a disadvantage until you realize how overpowered she actually is. Around mid-game, you'll likely feel extremely overpowered. There were legitimately times I thought it was impossible to lose. Even when I didn't reapply healing, she just does so much damage most things fall long before she is in any real danger. And to be honest, I'd love to say this is where the game ends, with some overpowered abilities that make the game feel like a joke, which can be ignored in favor of more diverse skills. But it does not. Instead, everything simply becomes less fair. There will be fights in the sky on platforms that disappear after a couple seconds. It forces you to think well in advance, as falling is a substantial bit of damage, coupled with enemies punishing most mistakes. The right mistake at the wrong time can instantly end a run. And this is the type of mistake where you walk away frustrated. It's luck. So what are you supposed to learn from it? Pay better attention to the platforms? Hope they don't do the same attack? Pray positioning better favors you? By the time the final boss comes around, it starts feeling like a bullet hell game, where damage is inevitable, it's just a question of whether you can heal through the pain. Something that isn't always an option, as there are one-hit moves even on normal. None of this makes for an enjoyable experience. I can overlook a slightly imbalanced opening, or players feeling impossibly strong. It's when the game expects everyone to be broken that problems occur, as there really isn't a point in exploring most attacks, nor is there a reason to master the gameplay loop. Sure, I'm willing to bet the final boss is a lot easier with the right moves, but that catalyst for growth shouldn't be cheap nonsense. Because all you're doing is swapping one overpowered tactic for the correct overpowered attack, a choice that can have depth, just not when it's done to circumvent most mechanics. While I touched on combat extensively, there are some Metroidvania aspects here. Basically, there are a few puzzles that can only be completed with later powers. It is a nice touch, as these sections usually have additional lore to uncover. It allows the story to play out without fear of something being revealed too early. The only real downside is the final power-up, Levitate. As the name suggests, it allows Ariana to levitate for a period of time. I don't know how many things were designed with it in mind. I'm going to guess not many, so the main purpose is to make puzzles easier. Now, I'm not against accessibility options. Some of the puzzles are really hard to accomplish, though it's entirely possible I inadvertently cheesed them. It just feels like a move that eliminates most of the puzzle challenge. Levitation lasts like 8 seconds. There is a lot that can be accomplished in that time. I don't know. It just makes the optional things feel even more like a checklist, something that doesn't really matter as so many of the puzzles are just for resources. Just to be clear, I would not classify Ariana as a bad game. When I think of a bad game, I imagine something that is outright miserable, missing on most, if not all, marks, whereas this is a poorly balanced game with an okay story. For the most part, you'll spend this adventure being overpowered, though this is an obvious choice. You don't need to use the overpowered spells. Who knows, there might be even more broken spells I never bothered to check out. With the exception of a couple encounters, it is more than possible to beat it using whatever makes you happy. It just might feel somewhat frustrating at times. As for story, I would've just liked to see a bit more. Stories like this work best when you either defy expectations or do more with the premise. Ultimately, Ariana tries, I just don't think it accomplishes it, partially due to so much time being used to sell you on an idea you already accepted. So, for these reasons, I think it's an okay choice if you really like the art style or just want a new action game to play with. Like I said, it is poorly balanced, but outside of a few extremely frustrating bits, it is mindless fun. And for some, that is enough. Hey, thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, don't forget to leave a like, and for more content, please subscribe.